Hello, everyone. Today, I thought I would continue on into a series of tutorials to just share the approach that I use to improvise spontaneously. And so I was thinking about how to do that, what might be useful for folks who may have a couple keyboards or a studio that in the past you've constructed music by writing it out, or you play sheet music and you want to be a little freer. You want to just be able to sit down and explore playing without having to remember a song you memorized, for example. So, in order to do that, of course, you have to have some music theory to understand chord structures and basic progressions and so forth. But so one of the things that I have done in the past is I got a book of scales, and every scale imaginable. And in my early part of my music career, when I was learning on the pipe organ, I would do scales to practice my technique. Every scale from C major, A major, F major, and so I would know those scales cold by playing them. It's a great skill to have from a standpoint of strengthening and giving your fingers the flexibility to play, but it also kind of incorporates memory as to, well, what keys are in a particular scale. And so it allows me to just remember, or at least have a pretty good understanding, what individual notes fit within a particular chord. So I was thinking about it, how do I actually start to come up with a chord progression I want to play around? Well, sometimes it just comes out of me because I have a certain feel in the day and I've been thinking about music and boom, it just comes out. But occasionally I might even go on to Google and ask for some unique chord structures, tell it the emotion I'm trying to evoke and feeling, and it comes back with some ideas, half of which I don't care for, some of which I use as a seed, and then I play around. Today, I just came up with another chord structure, very simple, but I start in A major, that's A major. Now I could, like in my first video, I was using the fifth. And but today what I'm going to do is I'm going to be in the A major scale, and then I'm going to go down a whole tone to the G major. And then after that, I think I'm going to go to a D major, which is the relative fourth to the A major scale. So this is my chord progression that I'm going to use as the fundamental progression in my song. So now that I know that, I want to also have a variation of that kind of adds some diversity to that, because if I just have a song that is those three chords going back and forth, I can create quite a bit of variety, but it gets a little old. So if I decide to do a little different reversal, now I just decided, I'm sitting there thinking, and if you're sitting down at your keyboard and you're trying to play, just figure out some different chords you might want to try. So I'm going to do A major, and then I'm going to try C sharp. That doesn't work very well, does it? So I don't really care for that. But what about, let's see if I tried a C major. Wow, that sounds a little strange. But I've heard, you know. So I'm going from A major to C major. Now I'm sitting there thinking in my mind, I'm thinking, you know, it might be kind of cool to go to D major after that. So now I start with A major, I go to G major, and now I go to D major, back to A major. Now, as a variation, I go so I'm for the variation, I'm going to go A major to C major to D major to A major. Okay, so those are the chords I'm going to use in this song that I construct. I kind of like it. It's got some variations, and now what I have to do is now I want to add inversions within the bass and the upper notes, and play notes that are within the scale of the major scale I'm in, which is A major. So a lot of that is just arpeggiating the chords, right? And doing some grace notes or things that are within the scale of A major, but they're not in the A major chord itself. Now this sounds kind of like a piano sound. Pianos work well with that progression, and I kind of feel like a drum pattern. So I'm going to use my Korg Kronos here, and use its drum pattern on it's called Tinseltown is the combination I'm going to use here, and I'm going to go to a piano sound, my grand piano here, deep virtual grand, and instead of playing, I'm going to start here, but I'm going to have it set so when I start playing on this keyboard, the drum pattern will start. So therefore, I can sit and I can play an introduction here, and then get into the full song improvisation on the Korg keyboard. So here we go. Again, I'm going to use A major, G major, D major, A major, and then the alternative here is, okay? Now, one other comment I'd mention is I'm in A major, but I can do the same thing with any key, major scale on the keyboard. So I could start with C major as my primary scale. So see, I'm just using relative chords, and so if I shift the primary scale, I could shift every other chord that I use to that new scale relative to that new scale that I'm using, and create the same song in just a different key signature. But right now, let's stay with A major, and I'm going to play now just an improvisation based on what I said. I've already got the chord structures down, and on top of those chords I'm going to play, I'm going to embellish some runs and some arpeggiation and so forth to break up the chords and make it more moving, the sound being moving. Okay, so here we go. And I'm going to probably do several of these. I'll start out like this. I'll come back and say, well, here's some chord progressions. And then let's see what I want to do with sounds, and I'll put them together. And so you'll start to get a feel for how to do that and get bolder and bolder in your creation process just by trying it out. But the one thing I would suggest for anybody who wants to do this is to truly, you don't have to be a music theory expert. In fact, I really don't incorporate in my mind what specific, relative minors or whatever I play in my music. That is just evoked from what I feel inside and from playing music for a long time. Also, a lot of you may listen to a lot of music online, and you know what you like, progressions. So try to work those progressions out into a recognition of the relativity of those different chords so that you can just improvise on that particular chord structure, or progression. Okay, so here we go. I'm also going to try to keep these to about 20, 25 minutes, because if it's any longer than that, I know folks don't have time to spend on that. So here we go. All right, so that is a variation. Now, I'm just going to go and change this up to another key, just so that you have an idea of how easy this is. So instead of A major, G major, and D major, I'm going to go from A major, I'm going to go up to C major, to B flat major, so it's the exact same song, just shifted up from A major to C major scale, which is, so the song is now in the key of C. So you can do that with almost anything if you want variety and you're playing in one key signature for a long time. It gets rather old. So it's easy when you're playing multiple improvisations, or if you want to basically go from one key structure to the next, you can you can transition to another key and play then the same chord progression in a different key signature. It just adds, again, more variety to what you're playing, so it's more interesting to the ear over time. Okay, that is my tutorial for the day. I'm really curious if this kind of stuff in bite-sized chunks is useful to you. I'd really love to hear if there's other stuff I can instruct on based on, the world according to Jim and the way that I do my improvisations. I would love to share. So take care. I hope you have a wonderful day, and God bless.